to if they'd be available, and they said they would not be available. So Brittany can kind of give us the bigger picture of what the bigger player in the social media space is doing in all this. And that might actually be a good place to jump off. I think, you know, if you read a lot of Britain's coverage, you're seeing how a lot of these social discovery apps are being built right on top of Facebook. In return, Facebook is getting a lot of the data that's being collected by these apps, and it's a lot of the powerful, you know, numbers that and facts and figures and all that great social discovery stuff that we're looking for. And so I wanted to ask Brittany how she expects Facebook to try and use this data, and if Facebook's going to emerge as a player in the social discovery space.
But also through photos of your friends, locations you might want to try, pages you might like, all of that stuff is on the site. But where the real power is going to come from is other companies and other apps building on top of the Facebook platform and focusing on, whether it's focusing on photos like Instagram or focusing on music like Spotify. But again, all of that is being built on top of Facebook, and Facebook's getting that data.
So we think a lot about Facebook. So just to give you a sense of what we're doing is we're really helping sites, for example, well, I'll back up. One of the interesting trends that we noticed a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, is that many of the sites we were working with started to get more referral traffic from Facebook and Twitter than they were getting from Google, from traditional SEO. And it was coming from discovering the newsfeed. And so there were a few different ways that occurred. One was starting to think about how can you give users reasons to syndicate as much content as possible to their friends. So they're thinking about sharing hooks through things like comments. After you leave a comment, syndicate a comment, or after you watch a video, be prompted to watch a video. With the recent Facebook frictionless sharing, it's actually developing quite a bit more features to allow people to seamlessly share.
For the app developer, it's incredibly useful because a lot of those actions, if they're engaging enough, can spawn new users, and you can actually create that viral loop from those actions. But I think it's one of those things that you can kind of see a snippet of it on your Facebook. When you're in Facebook, that data about your friends listening to songs on Spotify or buying something, that's just like the tip of the iceberg of a massive amount of data that I think Facebook is only just beginning to figure out how they can use for social discovery or for ad targeting or any number of purposes.
Yeah, I would add, I think Facebook is incredibly powerful and an incredibly great use case for developers or content owners or marketers who are trying to get their content discovered. But I'd also say it's not the only use case. If you extrapolate out and think about real world, you know, in the real world, you look to your friends to recommend things to you, and that's interesting, though you also have lots of friends who maybe don't care what music they listen to or, you know, what fashions they're into. But you also have a lot of other ways of discovering things. You have, you know, your cable subscription, or maybe you use Hulu, whatever it is, and you subscribe to things you like in that way. New things are served to you in that regard. So there's a number of different ways that people find and discover content. You know, at Stumble Upon, our company in particular, we certainly want to let you follow sites and learn about new services from friends that you have, and we use Facebook's data for that, you know, letting you find your Facebook friends. But we also want you to discover content based on people who have interests similar to you, or
that's the intention on those, is that the functions, features, and terminologies is targeted for a specific market, which gives a lot of benefit in different areas. That it's not going to have the adoption rates that you have on the big 900 million, 1 billion Facebooks, but it is a targeted market that allows for people to really get connected because they're all thinking about the same thing.
People, as Pinterest was really exploding earlier this year, there was a lot of talk about the rise of Pinterest, and is that competitive to Facebook in some way, or Tumblr. Pinterest, Tumblr, Path, all of these things which at some point we've discussed, or the media has discussed about being a competitor, is actually built on Facebook Open Graph, and it integrated those custom verbs and are really giving Facebook that structured data to then any advertiser can target ads against. You know, that stuff is flowing in through the Facebook newsfeed, and Facebook recently reorganized the way the follow button works. So some of the apps that came out building on Open Graph were using this idea of a follow. You follow somebody that you're not a friend with, maybe you know, a celebrity chef or an athlete or a musician. The way that Facebook's doing that now is converting it so that anybody using that follow will actually be able to follow that person, and that content will appear in your Facebook newsfeed, as opposed to requiring somebody to think to go to Pinterest or a fashion site or a music site. All of that information is going to be streaming into their Facebook newsfeed and then sending people out to those individual sites. So it really is this means of discovery for a number of other apps, and I think that's the way Facebook's positioning themselves.
Everything is now social, even search is the big search engines are putting more social. Is that impacting how StumbleUpon is approaching this, or is it business as usual?
No, I think certainly we look at social as one of the channels you can use to discover stuff at StumbleUpon. So certainly you want to see content that to find cool new stuff. But as I said earlier, I think there are at least 4 different ways of discovering stuff that is relevant in a general social sense. So one is literally, here are my 250 Facebook friends or Twitter, people I follow on Twitter. Here's stuff that I might want to see because they liked it. Another totally different context is, here are the 10 interest categories that I've opted into. I'm going to find stuff related to that, but it's not just random stuff from anywhere on the web. It's stuff that this other community of users at StumbleUpon, who have interests similar to mine, have submitted to the engine and have thumbed up and have said, this is good stuff. And thus, in the interest categories I have,
not sure what will happen there. But I do think that there is a lot of power there as far as, some of the things that we've talked about already, that knowing what people's interests are and who they are following, what general categories of things they're interested in, and being able to serve up recommendations or just other content based on that, or paid advertising. But it's definitely not as sophisticated as Facebook in the way that it's not very structured. There's just so little information that people put into their profiles that I think they're going to struggle to provide really relevant recommendations.
Users, even as a user, you start to even look at more followers. You follow people. How you can actually get information right to you that you are really interested in, because it gets to a point where you're following so many people, you get so much stuff, you're not even looking at it anymore, and you start to lose that as one of the main goals of them, is delivering information from people that are talking about things that you're interested in. If you get too big, you start to just don't even look at it anymore. So I think that's a huge challenge that they have.
To link people up to different mobile games. Whereas, a lot of the discussions we'd have when we're buying a car, they might not necessarily be happening online. They tend to be happening over the backyard fence or with people that we know that are driving these vehicles. So I think social shopping right now is probably too broad of a category. I think you have to look at the specific segments within what we call shopping, would be my take on that.
And others, commerce, media, entertainment, video, all of that is a much more immediate and obvious use case. But if you extend out the notion of how connecting people online in a network model is going to transform things, I think it certainly applies to lots of different categories.
In addition to Kickstarter, I actually recently heard about a company that's helping to kind of crowdfund people's mortgages. So again, all of these ways that you can kind of use just people connecting online to replace the institutions.
One caveat I was going to say to just discovery for shopping purpose, and I'm obviously not in the space. So one thing I imagine that has to be a challenge for some of these merchants is that you're saying so many things about yourself on Facebook, but there's kind of who we are in the offline world, and I think